Yeah, well, she's sharing a screen. Our topic, our masterclass today is about building authority with podcast platforms. And oh yeah, yeah, you can see your screen now.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
So I want to let you know that this is powered by John Momentum and John Momentum Global, and probably you have couple you are an expert, you are a professional in one field or the other, and you have a lot of things to share with people and you don't know how to share them, you don't know how the platform through which you can use or how the channels that you can use. And that is why we are trying to share this piece of information with you to build your building authority with podcast platform. And my name is Taiwo, and I have with me, my name is Taiwo Adigun, and I have with me Ife Oluwa Molewa. So I will be taking you through the journey today, and we know that in today's digital landscape, everything is about digital now, and even the business world is going digital, and the media is going digital, and the podcast as well is going digital. So podcast has have an powerful tool in building your career, in building the confidence, in building that thing that you want to discuss with people. I've seen a lot of professionals share their thoughts, share their ideas through podcasts nowadays, different podcast platforms. And today we'll be taking you through all those journey and how to pick your particular topic, how to know your niche, your target audience, how to the recording tools you need, the recording tools you need, the environment at which you need to record, the monetization of your podcast, where you can put your podcast, and and everything as regards podcasting. So we're going to give a brief history of podcast. Podcast is as rooted to early 20s. So and podcast is the bringing of two words together. That is iPod and broadcasting. So and I remember Steve Jobs then when the iPod was released and he was the one giving the speech about podcast. So it was new to everybody, and initially there's a broadcasting on an iPod. So it's a weekly broadcast that is being disseminated, whereby you can listen to on every iPod then. So and a journalist by 2004 named Ben Amersley so now coined the word together, iPod broadcasting, which produced podcasts that we have today. And since then, podcasting has become the mainstream of the media. And we can know that in the by 2010, we now have professional studios, media companies that are now investing heavily in podcasting because it has it has in years turned out to be an important part of the media content curation. And now we now have a lot of media, a lot of podcast channels from Spotify to Apple Podcasts, which is the origin of how podcasting began. And we used to have Google Podcast, but now it is YouTube Music or YouTube Podcast. And since then, podcasting has been something that people want to create, people want to watch, moreover, podcasts give you the edge the edge over the conventional media stream. A podcast stream gives you an edge over conventional media stream to the extent that you can say you can be open-minded on podcast. Unlike the main media stream, which is being governed by different body, where you can say some words, you can use some words on the mainstream of the terrestrial radio or TV, but podcasts give you the opportunity to do that. And I will be adding over to Ife to proceed on white podcasting and a couple of things we still need to know about podcast.
Yes. So thank you, Taiwo. So we are starting from, continue with white podcasting. Taiwo has started with podcasting and everything. So we're like, why podcasting out of everything? Why? So the first point that we'll be talking about is building your brand. Podcast builds your brand. You know, broadcast give you a platform. It gives you a platform to showcase your expertise, to showcase your skills, to showcase your talent, to showcase your area of specialization. That's what podcast does for you. It helps you to impart knowledge and to build a name for yourself. It helps you to build a name for yourself. Like most of these podcaster, we don't know them before they start podcasting. Some of them, we don't know them, but through their podcast, oh, we know this person. This person is doing podcast and everything. Once they mention their names, we know them. Then another thing that podcast does is it engage your audience. You know, it engage your audience because you share common beliefs, common experience with your audience. Like for example, there are some podcasts that talks about trauma. You know, people that have undergone trauma, people that are still in trauma, that are still trying to overcome trauma, they are able to connect with the podcaster because the podcaster is talking from experience, from his or her experience. You know, they're able to relate, to talk, they are able to, to connect, share a bond together, share experiences. So that's what podcast does too. And podcasts grow your network. It really does. It grow your network. There's this popular podcast in Nigeria. In Nigeria, the Honest Bunch. It's quite popular. The host of this podcast. I know some people know it's like some people know him before and everything, but someone like me, I didn't really know him. But from its podcast now, I know this person. Like it's open doors for you. It's open doors to people. Like many people now want to be on it or on his podcast because many people, influential people, important people want to be on it podcast because it has the engagement, it has the views, it has the network. So it's open doors. It's open open doors for you, like I said, open doors for you to greater reach and influential people. Then it boosts your visibility. Like I said earlier, I didn't know the person before, but now I know the person. You can't talk about this person and not know. So far you are active on social media, so far you're a social media person, you will know this person. Like it boosts your visibility, it attracts new listener, expand your online presence, thereby making you a leader. Then okay, the next um thing we are considering is developing your podcast concept. How do I develop podcast? We'll be talking about podcast. How do I develop it? What was the starting point for me? What should I do first? The first thing you have to do is podcast name. You have to look for a name, get a name, a catchy name. You get a name, get a name that resonates, that reflects your brand, that reflects what you're talking about, that reflects your topic. You can't want to talk about, for example, you can't want to talk about trauma, like your topic is, your podcast is about trauma, and name your podcast. I said what I said. No, it doesn't correlate. I said what I said to trauma. It doesn't. You have to look for a name that even hearing the name, like if I say, oh, I said what I said, is where people share their opinion. They don't care about anybody. They share their honest opinion, like honest too. They share their honest opinion. So the name reflects the brand. The name reflects what the podcast is all about. So first thing first is the name. Then I will say the number three before number two. Then the podcast format. Yes, podcast format. You have to know the format you want to use. Is it solo podcast? Is it interview podcast? Is it a discussion podcast? Is it talk show? Because this will help you in setting up it will help you in setting up in setting up your studio. It will help in planning. Though we'll talk about that later. So you have to consider, you have to know, okay, will I be the only one that will be on my podcast? Will I have guests? Yes. Then will it be interview? Will I be asking questions? Will they be answering me? Or will it be a talk show, a discussion whereby both of us will give our honest opinions? Then the third one that I'll be talking about is target audience. Who are my target audience? Are they male or female? If they are male, are they high school guys? Are they kids, children? Are they university students? Are they married men? If they are females, are they pregnant women, single ladies? Newly married women, are they widows, widowers? And no, are they divorcee? You have to know, you have to be specific, so that you will streamline. You have to streamline, you have to know the kind of people you are talking to, you have to know your target audience. You have to make a research. And what are my target audience? Is there visibility? Is there something like is there any future for my podcast with this my target audience? That means you have to make a research. Okay, those people that have been in this feed talking about this particular topic, excuse me, talking about this particular topic to this target audience, what are those things that are shying away from? What are those things they are not discussing? What are those things that are discussing? But I still have some things to talk about. I still have things to, to contribute to it. That's your target audience. Then we talk about content pillars. Content pillars means identify your main themes and category. Like I said, once you know your target audience, you have to know your main themes. You have to do researches. You have to observations. You have to research on it. You have to make observation topics. You have to these are the pillars. These are the categories. Like I said, categories. Okay, I want to talk about pregnancy. For instance, I want to talk about pregnancy. I want to talk about this. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about technology. I want to talk about this culture. I want to talk about that's your content pillars. Then we are moving on to the next one, which is the episode ideas. You have to brainstorm a lot of episodes because a lot of topics for your episode. Like if you want to start a podcast, you have to have like at least like 10 episodes already. From today, like even once you start your podcast, like this period for the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks, you have to have topics. It's not as if that okay, I finish a podcast today, then I'm not start thinking of next week topic. No, it's not done that way. You have to have your topics, except if you want to jump on trend. Maybe something is trending in your particular niche, in the particular niche you're focusing on. Okay, maybe you want to jump on it, you just want to talk about it. This will even help you. This will help you, make a list of guests. Invite guests in advance, telling them in advance, okay, I need you on my show, I need you in my studio by this and that. So you have to have your episode ideas. Then another thing, the last thing we're talking here is podcast branding. And this will include your logo, your color palette, the font style. Am I using this? What is this color representing in this and that? So it gives visual identity. Visual identity. Next slide. So now we are talking about the equipment and necessary things needed for podcast. First is a professional and good phone camera. Some people might be, okay, yes, it's understandable. I want to start a podcast. I have things to say on this particular topic. I have things to say, but I don't have the financial capacity to start, to buy a professional camera, to rent a studio, to invite guests and do this and everything. You can even start in the corner of your room. You have people that started in the corner of their room. You just have get a good, clean, conducive, noise-free place. Just camera phone. We have phones that have good cameras. We can good phones that have good camera. You can use your phone, but just get a ring light for lighting and everything. Get a ring light, and you are good to go. Then the next thing is microphone. We have microphones we have the wireless lapel that you can use microphones, and the last I checked it was around 14K or something. So you can get a microphone. You can get a microphone. Then the third one is headphones. What do I need headphone for? Headphone is used to hear your own voice, hear the voice of your guest. I mean, hear your own voice so that you will know how your listener, your audience, yes, your audience is it too high, is it too low, is it this or that? It will allow you to balance, it will help you gauge how your audience hear you. So the next one we are looking at is audio mixer interface. The audio mixer interface help you record. It's very important. It's important. It will help you. Is it important? Yes. Is it compulsory to have it? No. If you are having, I mean, if you are doing like a small, I'm talking about a small podcast in the corner of your room, or if you have the capacity, it is advisable to get that. It is advisable to get a audio mixer. I mean, a audio mixer interface. It helps you to record you know, helps you to connect to your laptop, do a lot of stuff. Then you need your computer. You need a computer, like I said, you need a computer for your store. Then you need a studio and conducive environment. That you don't want an environment, you don't want to be recording a podcast and a baby is crying, a baby is crying or someone is talking and everything. A baby is crying or at one side or anything. No, no, it will put audience off. And concerning the camera, the reason you need a good camera, you might have important stuff to say, but once your visuals is bad, people are logging off. Like once I want to hear a podcast, I log in. Your topic, your brand name is catchy, your podcast name is catchy, and everything. I log in and the visuals is no, 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 no. Log off straight. No, that's why it's very important. Then we are talking about leveraging guest interviews. Okay, I want to do a solo. Is solo podcast not nice? Why should I get it? Yes, we have many popular solo podcasts. We have the financial feminist criminals. We have solo podcasts that are doing fine. But if you leverage it, but having a guest on your podcast is also nice, and we give reasons. The benefit of guest interviews, it brings fresh perspective to you, it brings fresh ideas, it expands your reach. You know, if you are bringing someone that is very popular on his or her own, maybe an influential person or a podcaster, another podcaster, you are bringing that person to your own podcast. You know, you are bringing the person's listener like that. That means your podcast will have a wider reach, expand your reach. It's valuable insights and everything. Then the next thing we are talking about is selecting your guests. You have to select guests that align with your views. Don't select guests that okay, their own views is total, is opposite to what you believe in. It might cause fight on the on the show. So you have to select guests that align with your niche, that offer unique expertise, ensuring relevant and engaging conversation. Then the last thing we'll be saying here is interview interviewing techniques. You don't want to sound like you don't know what you are doing on your podcast. You have to prepare thoughtful questions. You have to listen, engage. You have to engage. You have to be brilliant. You have to sound brilliant. You have to be brilliant yourself. So you have to you have to be prepared for your podcast. So next. Okay, next slide. Now we are talking about developing a consistent podcast schedule. This is very, very important. So, as okay, we know that podcast is important, podcast is nice, it's good and everything. Developing a consistent podcast schedule is the main thing. You don't want to, you know, have a podcast, go live today. I mean, publish a podcast today, and 1 month you are leaving your audience hanging. Like that means you are not consistent, and it won't last. It won't last. That's why enjoy momentum every Thursday. We know that every Thursday we have a launch and end podcast. Every Thursday, whether we like it or not, we know that every Thursday by 12 p.m. launch and end podcast is going live. So it must be consistent. And how do you develop a consistent podcast schedule? We have number one, planning. You have to plan. You have to plan. Like I said, you have to have a content calendar. You have to plan in advance. You have to have a topic. You don't have to after today, tomorrow. You are not thinking of the next topic that you have to publish next week. No, no, no. You have to have a content calendar, outline topics. You have to make you have to make sure your guests are ready. If the guests that will come in 3 weeks' time already know today that they are coming in 3 weeks' time. You have to that will help you. That will help your plan. Then the next thing is recording. Recording. You have to select a dedicated time for your recording. Make sure you have a top-notch video, top-notch audio, then distraction-free environment. Make sure everything is perfect. Then the third one is editing and seriously, we know that editing is work. Yes, it is work. So even though that you don't have time, You can give it to video editors, you have them all over. They will edit your podcast. Just let them know that I want my and they will make sure that it's ready. So editing, allocate time for editing, adding music, sound effects, ensuring professional audio visual. Then the last one I'm thinking here is publishing. Like I said before, make sure you have a consistent release and date for releasing your episodes. Leave your audience hanging. Don't release episode today and another 2 months you are releasing the next episode. You won't get a community like that and you won't last long in the podcast, especially now that we have many podcasters. People will switch to other people. Thank you. Next slide. I think I'm handing over to
Oh, okay, well
Tayo.
done. Ife. Well done. That was great. And but before we go further, um, let's talk about German mentor, because this masterclass is powered by German Momentum, and let's talk a little bit about what German Momentum is all about. German Momentum is a full remote firm, based in the UK, and we have associates that is spread all over the world. We have associates in Asia, Europe, Africa, North America, South America. We are spread all over the world because we are fully remote tech firm, and we solve anything, any tech issue, so we provide any tech solution. And so we have different products like you've seen on the screen. We have Cash My Skills, we have Job Simulator, we have Growth Academy, and the one that I listed there. So I'm just going to talk about a bit about each of them. So when it comes to Cash My Skills is a product that is a product that provides seamless end-to-end solution for your consultation needs. So it empower coaches, mentors, and consultants to focus in delivering values. So this is what job momentum is all about. If you're a coach and you want to deliver value seamlessly, I think you need to join. You need to contact job momentum, and you need to jump on Cash My Skills. And what job simulator? Job simulator is utilizing cutting edge AI technology. As a matter of fact, the last time I checked, we have our own that GPT for like a form of AI technology whereby we search any prompts, it's gonna give you what you're searching for when it comes to job simulator. And it's a product that provides user with hands-on experience in realistic job scenarios. So we want our people who are searching for job, how it's been done, to come with us and experience what it is. When we have Growth Academy, and Growth Academy is specialized service designed to help experts, educators, and professionals create impactful online courses through our exclusive signature partners. We have a lot of partners that partner with us when it comes to Growth Academy. And I don't want to start mentioning the partners because there are more partner than you important platinum partners actually. And we have product like Launch Channel Podcast, and which comes on every Thursday on from 12 noon. And basically, most of our associates are the one participating in this, but we know that we will be inviting guests very soon on our podcast to share their own insights, to share their own experience with us. And we have investment and funding. Even if you want to, if you are looking for a firm, a tech firm to invest in, come to John Momentum. You will never regret it. You will get the return of your investment in John Momentum. If you're a business person and you want to accelerate your business, you want to upscale, you want to take it to the next level, come to John Momentum. And we have degree diversity, whereby we have mentors that is going. We have mentors, a lot of mentors that is going to mentor you on how to do how to do things that think they are difficult for you to do. We have mentors, and we have first code marketing. Do you have a product that you want to market? You want to take it to the next level, and you don't know how? Come to Job Momentum. We know how to. We have tools, we have skills, we have professional that is going to do that for you. And we have talent recruitment system whereby we have a GTI cap where you can work for us for 6 months, and you have you gain a lot of experience. We have testimonies on our social media. You can go and watch it. People who have joined us, who have participated in what we're doing, real life work experience, and they have a lot of things to say. I'm just going to refer you to our website. You go to our website www.johnmiton.co.uk/product portfolios. So from there, you will know more about what I'm talking about. So before further ado, let's go back to this is business of the day, podcasting, and how to build authority with podcast platforms. So now I'm going to start with optimizing your podcast for SEOs, because one thing you want your podcast to do is that once they search the first few words, you want your podcast to be at the top of the search. Which so because one thing I've noticed when I search is that the first thing I once I when once I punch in, I want to search online and punch in the word, the first one that comes to me I would think is the genuine one, and that's the one I'm going to pick. And how do you do that? Number one is your podcast title. Your podcast title must be relevant. You must use relevant keywords that is related to your topic. Because if you are not using the relevant keywords, when they are searching for the words, it won't bring it out, and you might not even have the algorithm. So, and podcast description. This is podcast description. What the podcast is all about, not the. I'm going to talk about the episode title and description. It's quite different. The podcast description is what is a podcast is all about. What is it all about? That is what genre of podcast are you talking about? So the podcast itself, what is it talking about? And we have episode titles and description. Now this time around, we are putting the episode title. What is the topic of the day all about? And what is the description? The description it carries if you have a guest on the show, the name of the guest, what you're talking about, the description, and your social media, and everything you need to be added to the description, which is going to give more finesse to your podcast. And we have the podcast category, and we always advise people to categorize their podcast because what is a podcast talking about? Is it all about humanity? Is it all about tech? Is it about education? Is it about women? You need to categorize your podcast so that when they are searching women in tech and you did something in your as regard podcast women in tech, for example, for example, and the first thing that comes out is your podcast because you've already optimized it with all these four things I've mentioned. Now let's go to how to promote your podcast. How do I promote my podcast? And how do I generate traffic online? There are so many ways through you can generate traffic online. This is obviously you're putting it on the internet, or putting it on the internet. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the social media. Fine. Social media is a platform where everybody is. You have to engage your followers, your followership. You have to engage them to promote your show. So different social media. I want to say this. Some people want to have their podcast, they create the channel, they create the podcast. You already set up the podcast. You have your topic already. But now it boils down to social media. Some people intend to create a new social media for the podcast, and some decide to use their existing account for the podcast. If you are creating a new social media for the podcast, I need to tell you, you need to leverage on your existing personal social media so that you need to share everything. You need to try the traffic that is on your own personal social media to your podcast social media. Or better still, you use your existing one, just rename it and name it your podcast. But with that, you have your audience. You don't need to start building your audience from scratch. Another one I need to talk about is email marketing. Probably you can use some tools for your listeners or viewers to register for your podcast, just for you to have some emails and to work with, because when you send an email to them, you email them, you try to remind them of your forthcoming podcast. Fine, emailing them might be boring, but trust me, it works sometimes. Because when you email them, this is my podcast coming up this so time. Please feel free to join it. We are talking about this and this and this. From the email, you're going to see people who have interest in that thing you're talking about. and they will click on the email. From the email, take them straight to your podcast channel. So another one is cross promotion. So you need to collaborate with other podcaster in your niche that is talking about what you're also talking about. Because what you're talking about, you're not the first person that is talking about it. Some people have been talking about it, and you'll be the first, and you won't be the last person who's going to talk about it as well. So what's your podcast, the structure, the format at which your podcast is all about. You will see people who have been talking about it, who have been on the same niche with you. So try to collaborate with them, speak with them so that they can use their own, let me use the word popularity, to also promote you so that you can have the same audience. And another one I'm going to talk about is website and blogging. There are so many websites where you can put your podcast, and like Buzzsprouts, Podomatic, Red Circle. There are a lot of them that, aside the conventional ones, we have like Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube Music, where you can also put those ones too. All these ones are more or less like a private one, like a free one, sorry, where you can put your podcast, and from there you can generate a lot of traffic to your podcast channel. You don't have to restrict your podcast to one podcast platform. Put it on several podcasts. And from blog, you can create a WordPress website where you can have everything you've talked about in your podcast and transcribe it into a text. There are a lot of AIs now that you can use to transcribe, as long as everything that was said on your podcast is English. So just transcribe it. The AI is going to transcribe it for you, and just give it from few light editing and add the picture of the podcast from YouTube, the short YouTube from the podcast. If you are doing if you have a guest, I mean, that is, if you have it, and even if it is you are doing about talking about the podcast, you can also do the same thing for yourself. So you can put your picture there and put a graphical representation of what you're talking about. So you can have a WordPress website where you can just put it, and you can also put the link to your website on the page. So once they are reading, they can just click on the website and take them to where the podcast is, and they listen and they watch live. So another one is guest appearance. The fact that you have a podcast, you are the host of a podcast, doesn't mean you won't have to participate in another person's podcast. The fact that you are participating in another person's podcast gives you an edge to publicize your own podcast and bring part of the listener, the viewership of that particular podcast you're attending to your own podcast as well. Because if you're talking about an important topic and people like what you're talking about, they will want to join you, connect with you, so that they can also learn more from whatever you are saying from your own podcast. So make sure that you also join other people in their own podcast as well. And another one I'm going to talk about is create a trailer reel, a promotional reels, a referral reels for yourself, important keywords that was said during your podcast, catchy keywords. I want to use the word controversial keywords that was said. Put them together, 30 seconds, 1 minute. Just put them together, put it online. I have a lot of example. I have an example of in here in Nigeria. It's called Honest Bunch podcast. Those guys, it is the controversial part of the podcast that they put online, and people start, you know, deliberating on it before the podcast come out, before the podcast was released. They start deliberating on it. It creates even though what led to the statement we don't know, but the fact that the controversial words was, was the one that was used as a promotion for the podcast. And people, once the podcast is released, people rush to go and watch it. So those are the things you can use to promote your podcast. So we're going to talk about the engaging your audience. Engaging your audience, call to action. You need to tell your viewers to engage in asking questions. Ask questions, because you need to ask you questions. It shows that you have the viewership. It shows that you have the listenership. When they ask questions, when they contribute to your podcast, when they contribute to your show, that shows that people are at the other end listening to what you're saying. You're not just speaking to the dead air. So people at the other end listening and watching. And where another one is community building. Community building, it is not only coming on the podcast for you to deliver message. You can decide that you will just want to do an 1 hour come live on any social media, Instagram, YouTube. You are live. You just 1 hour with me, ask any question, and as regards what we've discussed so far in the last podcast, let me answer your question because the podcast may be live and it may be released. So if it was packaged and released, you might not be able to answer the questions live. But coming online, just 1 hour with them, with your viewers, with your listeners, come 1 hour with them. They come and ask you different questions as regard what you've discussed in your last episode, and like that, we are building community. So audience feedback. So our feedback is very important. You need to let people who are in the business, podcaster who are in the business, before you let them watch your podcast, let them criticize your podcast. What you are doing good, what you are doing bad. They're going to tell you. It's just like having a retrospective about your podcast feedback. What am I doing good? What am I doing bad? Is very important as well. That is one way through we can engage, have much engagement on your podcast. So interactive episode. Make sure that your episode is always interactive. It's not boring. It's always interactive, and you do polls because one thing I notice about people is that they will watch your podcast or they will listen, but they won't comment. But if you create a poll on your podcast, it is not difficult for them to pick yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. From the yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, from the polls they are picking, they are selecting. They already have your feedback, and you can also do quiz giveaways. I think people love giveaways a lot. So yeah. So how do you monetize your podcast? There are so many ways through which you can monetize your podcast. Sorry, I'm trying to be fast. I know that our time is fast spent. So you can advertise. So advertising is one of the important way through which you can monetize your podcast. Um, Partner with brands that is going to sponsor, like partner with brands that are going to advertise their product on your podcast. For example, maybe you're talking about if an health podcast, and the health of there are some pharmaceutical company probably you know of that you have not been seeing their advert on anywhere. You can approach them that you have a podcast and you have this number of viewers or listeners, and once they see those numbers, and they went online themselves, they saw the algorithm, how versatile you are, they will definitely partner with you, even if they might not pay much, but at least you're getting something in return based on everything you've invested in putting the podcast together. So sponsorship as well. People can sponsor your podcast. They can sponsor your podcast. Um, People in different sector that can sponsor your podcast, and you mention their names on the podcast. We have affiliate marketing. Probably you are partnering with a product company and they want to sell their product, but you bring them to their podcast and they are selling their and they tell people about the product on your podcast. And when they can buy through you, they can just use your referral code or something that shows that they are buying through you like that. Through using that referral code, you are also earning a commission from them because they know that that referral code shows that they are coming from you. They are not just anybody, which also gives you your own commission. So membership and donation, people can donate, members can donate when they love what you're doing, when they really appreciate what they're doing, and you are putting smile on people's faces through your podcast. They can donate, they can be your members just to support you. And merchandise, you can start branding shirt, cup, jotter, pen, mug, all sort of things. You can start branding them with your name, and once your podcast is has generates that traffic, people will start buying, and they start buying your merchandise, and through that you're also making money for yourself. So now podcast analytics. How do you measure your podcast success? Number one is downloads. You have to track the number of people that are watching your podcast, because one thing about this is that if you have an organic audience, trust me, people will always want to be with you. But people only want to associate with podcast. People only want to jump on your podcast because you track the numbers, the number of episodes. So you have to compare and contrast how the last episode and this episode, what did you do that make them to have more high, what did you do to have high viewership, high um listenership? Is it the person that you brought to the show? So you have to watch that. And the engagement, so analyze metrics, so the number of listening, the number of listenership, the number, I mean, the number of time they watched your podcast, how many minutes you are, how many minutes was spent watching your podcast, how many minutes was spent listening to your podcast. So the website traffic, different websites where you have put your podcast, where it's a podcast episode or podcast channel, you need to monitor those websites, how they were doing, the traffic they are generating. Are they generating traffic you really want? And social media engagement. Like I said, you need to engage your fans, your viewers on social media. Like come live 1 hour with me, ask any questions. People ask you questions. Do giveaways, just a little token you can just give them. It might not necessarily have to be money. You can give them book, you can give them part of the merchandise that you've created just to have more success for your podcast. So continuous improving your podcast. It is very important that after you've been doing this for a while, you need to keep stepping up. You need to keep stepping up. You can't be on the same level for season one, season two, season three, and you have season five season and you're at the same level. You need to keep stepping because everything is evolving. So feedback and review will help you to improve your podcast. Feedback and review. When you have feedback and they review your podcast, it will help you. So this is what I'm doing right, this is what I'm doing wrong. So you take the wrong part you're doing to improve yourself, and so it also help you. So content experimentation. So you have to experiment your content, like the topic you did this week. Is it how did it the traffic how did it turn out to be? And this one I am doing as well. How did it turn out to be? You can't be doing the same thing every time. This season you are doing this. Another season you have to do new things so that it will bring more traffic. It will bring more improvement to your podcast. So technical optimization, you need to also get sophisticated equipment because once you start, you can't be using one equipment for 2 years in a row. It will be obsolete. So because after all, you've getting couple of funds from the podcast, you've been getting sponsorship, you've been getting advert. The more you get all those things, the more you improve your, let's say, your camera, your mic, your studio setup, your lighting, and all those. So you need to also improve your technical optimization and adapting to trends. So, assuming, for example, you have a topic already lined up you want to do, but something came up during the week as regards your niche, which you are, which your podcast is all about. I can tell you that you can hold on with that topic you've prepared, jump on that trend. It's going to make your podcast more popular. Jump on that trend, do something about that podcast. You can even invite people involved about the trend or probably something that happened during that week. Invite them. You don't necessarily have to be like, I already have someone I want to bring to my podcast this week, and something happened about your niche, and you didn't bother to adapt to the trend. Bring it in, suspend that one. You're going to also produce that one eventually, but the one you are bringing on, it's going to obviously going to give you um, more engagement. So, in conclusion, leveraging podcasts for lasting authority. Podcasts offer a unique opportunities to establish yourself as an authority in your field. So, by crafting engaging content, building a strong brand, and promoting your podcast efficiently, you can reach wider audience, build a loyal following, and promoting yourself, and to be a good leader in your field, in your niche. And with all these strategies we've shared, we know that podcast is not something difficult. You can start now. It involves some technicalities on how to put some things together, but I want to tell you that it's something you can do. Trust us, it is something you can do. If you need any help, just contact John Mentor. If you want to set up your podcast, if you want to do any of what I've mentioned so far, just contact us. We all are definitely be willing to assist you. Thank you very much. So thank you very much. I'm going to share something now. I'm going to stop sharing my screen though. For people who are here, I want us. I'm going to share something I've known for ages though. Um, it used to be free, but I just wanted to check out this website. If you, it helps you um, to put to have podcasts, or probably after you've had series of episodes, you've researched and recorded a couple of episodes. There is a website called Zeno Radio. With this podcast, from podcasts you can actually have an online radio station, from podcast. And I used to have one. I used to have one though. Um, I used to have an online radio station, but let me just put you through a quick one how you can have it as well. You have a Zeno Radio. Zeno Radio give you a platform where you can have a radio station. You can line up. You can have your podcast upload to that is a Zeno Radio, and have music one side, your podcast one side, and schedule them. Like in the next 6 hours, I want to play music, and in the next 2 hours, I want to play my podcast. Your schedule there. And there is another app I'm going to share now. If you are anywhere in the world, you can listen to an online radio anywhere in the world. Just search for the word Radio Garden. You can download it. It has an app on Apple Store or Google Play Store. So download the app anywhere you are in the world. Anywhere if you want to listen, if you are in UK, you want to listen to radio in Nigeria, online radio, anywhere you'll be amazed what this Radio Garden can do. So I think those are the two things I want to share with you guys. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate your gesture, your claps. Thank you. Over to you, sir. We don't know if you have any question.
Thank you, Taiwo. Thank you, Ife. It's amazing. I think we need to do another one, definitely. I can see some comments in the chat. We need to talk about monetization of the podcast, but that will be another topic for another time. But I think our time is off now. I want to appreciate everyone for joining. In fact, we need to discuss what we should do with recordings from these master classes because they're super good. And yes, you have access to the recording, Bumi. Yes, definitely, you have access to the recording. All right. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Our time is up now, but it's been really, really packed with so many, many tips and things that we can take away to act on. The most important thing is to do something with the information you have received here. Don't sit on it. Take action. Take action. All right. Thank you so much. Again, have a wonderful night, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.